Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. In this video today, we're going to be discussing citizenship renunciation, specifically U.S. citizenship renunciation. This isn't a topic I discuss very often, not particularly because there's anything wrong with it per se, but renunciation of U.S. citizenship is pretty rare. In my opinion, there are very, very few cases where it's particularly warranted. For a number of different rationales as to why it's not warranted. But there are certain circumstances where frankly it is. Most notably, there are folks that just happen to have been born in the United States and have U.S. citizenship, but have virtually no connection to the country. They were like born there because their parents were, in some cases were like studying in the U.S. or their parents were working in the U.S. briefly or something. And, they have U.S. citizenship, but they've lived abroad all their lives and they're not particularly connected to the country. And one of the big issues, especially in recent years with the passage of things like FATCA, the Foreign Account Transparency Compliance Act, and issues associated with tax compliance, etc., and the enforcement mechanisms which have been fairly significantly improved upon in recent years or increased as far as enforcement capability, folks have just, there have been more renunciations. But that being said, people seem to sensationalize this, which I don't really like. Yes, these numbers are rising, but as far as raw data, as far as raw numbers, these aren't huge amounts. And I've heard this, it seems like I've heard this same headline for years. Americans are renouncing citizenship at a record pace. It seems like I heard this last year and the year before and the year before that. Third quarter numbers point to another annual high. This comes from Bloomberg.com, November 2nd, 2017, quoting directly, in the third quarter of this year, 1,376 Americans renounced their U.S. citizenship, putting the annual tally on track to top 2016's record data from the Treasury Department show. If this year's fourth quarter mirrors that of 2016, when 2,365 people chose to expatriate, 2017's annual tally would be 6,813. That's a 26% rise from 2016's total of 5,411, which was itself a 26% jump from 2015. The long and the short, what you should probably take away from this, just these headlines, is yes, it's going up. And yeah, as far as year on year, the numbers are rising. I think a lot of this is basically attributable. I think a lot of these folks that were born in the United States that have relatively little connection to the country are looking at their situation and saying, I don't need this citizenship. Okay, I don't want, I'm not connected to the country enough to really warrant me maintaining this. And moreover, the cost of regulatory compliance, specifically tax compliance with U.S. law in order to maintain this, it's overly burdensome, and I just want to be done with it. There are other types of people who, for various reasons, decide to renounce. They could be for all kinds of reasons. I'm not going to get into the whys and hows of how all that works. One thing that should be noted with respect to U.S. taxes, there are tax implications, fairly significant ones, for renouncing U.S. citizenship. I'll get into that in another video on this channel in due course. But for now, the thing to take away from this video is, yes, renunciations are on the rise, but I made this video because I kind of wanted to point out the numbers. I mean, the raw numbers, yes, 6,000 people renounced citizenship. That being said, I think it's currently about 1 million folks a year immigrate to the United States every year, and I don't know the numbers of people that naturalize to U.S. citizenship every year. So, yes, those numbers are rising, but I think it's somewhat a result of the more, I don't like to use the word onerous, but the higher the threshold in dealing with one's tax compliance when you are a U.S. citizen, especially a U.S. citizen abroad. And I think a lot of these numbers can be attributed basically to folks who have relatively little connection to the United States, who are basically saying, look, the compliance, the pros and cons, the cost benefit, the cost of complying to the tax rules of being a U.S. citizen are more than it's worth to maintain this to me. And I think a lot of the folks you're seeing renounce are primarily folks who are, didn't have much of a connection to the United States to begin with.